Definition of skin is that it's a soft outer covering of the human body and it's the largest organ of the body. The function of skin is to provide sensation, so it has a variety of nerve endings which respond to temperature, pressure and pain. Another function is protection, so it has a layer which protects the body from external pathogens. And another function is storage, so water and lipids are stored in the skin. And another function is thermoregulation, so heat can be lost through the dilation of blood vessels to the skin and secretion of sweat from sweat glands, and heat can be preserved by the constriction of blood vessels to keep the warm blood away from the skin. So, the structure of skin, there are several layers. The outermost layer is called the epidermis, and this is the protective barrier because it's the one that's in contact with the outside environment. And it consists of stratified squamous epithelium, and inside that is basal and suprabasal keratinocytes. And there are no blood vessels in the epidermis, so the cells of the epidermis receive the nutrients from via diffusion from the capillaries in the dermis, which is the next layer. So there's no blood vessels going to the epidermis, so the nutrients it gets the nutrients from the capillaries in the dermis. Now, what's in between the epidermis and the dermis is the basement membrane, and this is a layer, as I said, between the epidermis and the dermis, and the basement membrane allows for transport of cells and molecules between the two layers. The layer following is known as the dermis. This is a layer which consists of connective tissue and it's elastic, so this is what cushions the body from stress. And there's quite a lot of nerve endings in this layer responsible for providing the sense of touch and heat. And this layer also contains hair follicles, sweat glands, sebaceous glands, apocrine glands, and lymph and blood vessels. The layer following on from the dermis isn't technically part of the skin, but it is below the dermis, and it attaches the skin to the underlying bone and muscle. It consists of elastin and loose connective tissue, and in this layer the cells which you can see are fibrocytes, macrophages and adipocytes. And our fact is that 50% of the body fat is stored in this subcutaneous layer.
इनका स्ट्रक्चर कैसा होता है? So, skin is part of the integumentary system that covers the body. It is the largest organ by mass and size. Now we see layers of skin. Skin is made up of 3 layers. First, epidermis. Second, dermis. Third, hypodermis. First, epidermis. Epidermis is the outer layer of skin. It's formed by stratified epithelium. It does not have blood vessels. Nutrition is provided to the epidermis by the capillary of dermis. Epidermis is formed by 5 layers. First, stratum corneum. Second, stratum lucidum. Third, stratum granulosum. Fourth, stratum spinosum. Fifth, stratum basal. First, stratum corneum. Stratum corneum is also known as horny layer. It is the outermost layer and consists of a dead cell, which are called corneocytes. The cytoplasm is flattened with a fibrous protein known as keratin. These cells contain phospholipids and glycogen. Now, second, stratum lucidum. Stratum lucidum is made up of flattened epithelial cell. Epithelial cells have degenerated nucleus, and in some cells the nucleus is absent. The layer looks like a homogeneous translucent zone. Now, third, stratum granulosum. Stratum granulosum is a thin layer with 2 to 5 rows of flattened rhomboid cell. Cytoplasms contain granules of a protein called keratohalin. Keratohalin is the precursor of keratin. Now, fourth, stratum spinosum. Stratum spinosum is also known as prickle cell layer. The cell of this layer possess some spin-like protoplasmic projection. The cells are connected to one another. Now, fifth, stratum basal. Stratum basal is a thick layer. This cell is made up of polygonal cell, superficially, and columnar or cuboidal epithelial cell in the deeper parts. Newly formed cells move continuously toward the stratum corneum. The stem cells which give rise to new cells are known as keratinocytes. Other type of cells that present in stratum basal are first melanocytes that are scattered between the keratinocyte. Melanocytes produce the pigment called melanin. The color of the skin depends upon melanin. Second, Langerhans cell, which are specialized form of dendrite cell. Langerhans cells are responsible for protective immune reaction. Now, after epidermis, there is second layer known as dermis. Dermis is the inner layer of the skin. It is connective tissue layer made up of dense and stout collagen fibers, fibroblasts, and histiocytes. Collagen fibers contain the enzyme collagenase, which is responsible for wound healing. Now, layers of dermis. Dermis is made up of two layers. First, superficial papillary layer, and second, deeper reticular layer. Now, first, superficial papillary layer. Superficial papillary layer projects into the epidermis. It contains blood vessels, lymphatics, and nerve fibers. This layer has some pigment-contained cell known as chromatophores. Dermal papillae are finger-like projection arising from the superficial papillary dermis. Papilla contains plugs of capillaries and lymphatics. Papilla are surrounded by retirigits extending from the epidermis. Now, second, reticular layer. Reticular layer is made up of reticular and elastic fibers. These fibers are found around the hair bulbs, sweat glands, and sebaceous gland. The reticular layer also contains mast cell, nerve ending, lymphatics, epidermal appendages, and fibroblasts. Immediately below the dermis, subcutaneous tissue is present. Lots of smooth muscle called erector pili are also found in skin around the hair follicles. Now third, hypodermis that present below the dermis. Hypodermis layer also called the subcutaneous layer. Hypodermis connect the skin to the underlying tissue of the bones and muscles. The hypodermis consists connective tissue and adipose tissue, which function as a mode of fat storage. That's all about.
The integumentary system, also known as the dermal system, is the largest system in the human body. It consists of structures that form the body's outer covering, and its functions include protection against the external environment, regulation of body temperature, regulation of hydration levels, sensory perception of touch, temperature, and pain, and synthesis of vitamin D. The major components of the integumentary system are the skin and the subcutaneous tissue. The skin consists of two layers. The epidermis, which is the superficial cellular layer of the skin, and the dermis, which is the deep connective tissue layer of the skin. The subcutaneous tissue, also known as the superficial fascia or hypodermis, is the connective tissue layer.